There is a lot behind almost every house in America right now. A backyard, a side yard, a strip of ground along a fence line. Most of it grows grass. Grass that gets mowed every week from May through October. Grass that gets fertilized and watered and treated for weeds. Grass that produces nothing. The average American family spends $1,200 on groceries every single month, $14,400 a year, to feed themselves from a store. In 1932, a family in Frugal, rural Illinois fed 6 people for a full year, from a lot the size of a standard suburban backyard. Not most of their food, all of their food, vegetables, legumes, grains, preserved produce that lasted through winter. They did not buy fertilizer. They did not buy pesticide. They did not buy seed. They used 5 methods that had been producing food from small plots of ground for thousands of years before anyone tried to sell them something else. And every single one of those methods works on the lot behind your house today, not as a hobby, not as a supplement to your grocery bill, as a replacement for a meaningful portion of it. Before this video is over, I'm going to walk you through all 5. And I am going to tell you exactly when each one was displaced and who displaced it, because none of this disappeared because better methods were found. It disappeared because methods that required purchasing something replaced methods that required nothing. And the people selling the something had the resources to make sure the nothing stopped being taught. The first method is the 3 Sisters system. And I want to start here because this is the one that most completely illustrates the intelligence of pre-industrial agriculture and the deliberateness of its suppression. The 3 sisters are corn, beans, and squash, 3 crops planted together in the same mound of raised soil, not side by side in separate rows. Together, in the same mound. The corn is planted first. It grows tall and straight and produces a vertical structure. The beans are planted at the base of the corn a week or 2 later. They climb the cornstalk. They do not need a trellis or a stake or any supporting structure that costs money. The corn is the trellis. The beans are legumes. Legumes have a relationship with specific soil bacteria that allows them to take nitrogen gas from the air and convert it into nitrogen compounds in the soil. This process is called nitrogen fixation. The beans fertilize the corn and the squash by fixing atmospheric nitrogen into a form the other plants can absorb through their roots. No purchased fertilizer, no synthetic nitrogen applied from a bag. The beans do it, continuously, for free. The squash is planted around the base of the corn and beans, its large leaves spread across the ground. Those leaves shade the soil, which does 2 things simultaneously. They suppress weed growth by blocking the light that weed seeds need to germinate. And they retain soil moisture by reducing evaporation from the surface. No herbicide, no irrigation beyond rain. The squash leaves handle both. 3 crops, 1 mound, each one solving a problem that modern agriculture charges money to solve. The corn feeds the household and supports the beans. The beans feed the soil and support themselves. The squash feeds the household and protects the soil. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is purchased. The system produces more food per square foot than any of the 3 crops grown separately in monoculture rows. Native Americans developed and refined this system over 3,000 years of direct observation and adaptation. It was documented by European settlers in the 1600s. It was in the United States Agricultural Extension Service manuals through the 1930s. After World War II, the Extension Service shifted its focus to commercial agriculture. The small plot, mixed crop, no-input methods that had fed rural families for generations were quietly replaced in the curriculum by monoculture methods that required fertilizer, herbicide, and purchased seed. Not because the 3 Sisters system stopped working, because it did not require purchasing anything, and the agrochemical industry that emerged from wartime chemical manufacturing needed farmers and gardeners to start purchasing things. The second method is the saved seed system. And this is the one that most directly created a financial dependency that had never existed before in the history of human agriculture. From the beginning of farming, seeds were saved. Every harvest, the best specimens of every crop were selected, not eaten, set aside, dried carefully, labeled, stored through winter in a cool, dry place, planted the following spring. The seed for next year's food came from this year's best plants, plants that had already proven themselves in that specific soil, in that specific climate, through that specific season's weather. The saved seed was better than purchased seed because it was locally adapted. It was free because it came from the previous harvest, and it improved over time because each generation of selection favored the plants most suited to that particular place. Depression-era families maintained seed collections that had been accumulating local adaptation for decades. Some seed lines in rural communities had been passed from family to family for generations. The entire agricultural economy of the household rested on the assumption that seed was something you kept, not something you bought. In 1947, hybrid corn varieties developed during and after World War II began entering the commercial seed market at scale. Hybrid seeds are produced by crossing two distinct parent lines. The resulting plants are vigorous and high-yielding in the first generation. But when you save seed from a hybrid plant and replant it, the offspring do not resemble the parent. The hybrid characteristics do not breed true. The saved seed is unreliable. This single biological characteristic, the failure of hybrid seed, to reproduce consistently, created for the first time in history a reason to purchase new seed every single year. Not because the old seed was inferior, because the new seed was engineered not to replace itself. Monsanto introduced its first hybrid seed products in the 1950s. By 1980, hybrid and later patented genetically modified varieties had captured the majority of the commercial seed market. The household seed-saving economy that had sustained agriculture for 10,000 years was not banned. It was simply made unreliable by the introduction of seed that did not work the way seed had always worked. The application today is direct. Open-pollinated and heirloom seed varieties, the varieties that predate hybridization and breed true from saved seed, are still available. They are sold by small seed companies and seed-saving organizations across the country. A single packet of open-pollinated tomato seed costs $2 to $3. The plants it produces will give you seed for next year, and the year after, and the year after that. One purchase. Indefinite supply. That is what the seed industry replaced. The third method is wood ash fertilization, and this one connects directly to the cleaning video because it uses the same material. Wood ash, the same ash that Depression-era women used to make lye soap, the same ash that came from the fireplace and the wood stove every single day, was also the primary soil amendment for the kitchen garden. Wood ash is rich in potassium. Potassium is one of the three primary nutrients that plants require: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. It is essential for root development, disease resistance, and fruit production. Wood ash also contains calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate raises soil pH, which is critical for gardens on acidic soils, the majority of garden soils in the eastern United States. A soil that is too acidic cannot release the nutrients already present in it to plant roots regardless of how fertile it is. Lime, calcium carbonate, unlocks the fertility that is already there. Wood ash provides both, potassium and calcium carbonate. From a material the household produced every day as a byproduct of staying warm, applied to the garden beds in autumn, wood ash worked through winter into the soil. By spring the beds were ready, no bag of fertilizer purchased, no soil amendment ordered. The fireplace fed the garden the same way the kitchen fed the compost pile. Nothing left the household without contributing something. Miracle Grow was introduced by Stearns Miracle Grow Products in 1951. By 1965, it was the best-selling garden fertilizer in the United States. It did not outperform wood ash and compost on a plot managed with attention and rotation. It outperformed the idea that fertilizing a garden required any effort beyond opening a bag and mixing it with water. Convenience replaced competence, and convenience, packaged and branded, generates revenue. Wood ash generates nothing for anyone except the garden it feeds. The fourth method is the deep mulch system, and this is the one that most directly addresses the two things that defeat most modern home gardeners before the season is halfway through: weeds and drought. A garden bed without mulch is a garden bed that grows weeds. Weeds compete with food crops for water, nutrients, and light. Managing them requires either chemical herbicide or hours of manual labor, neither of which Depression-era families had the resources to spend. So they mulched. In late autumn, after the last harvest, every garden bed was covered with a thick layer of organic material, straw from the harvest, fallen leaves raked from the yard, spent hay from the barn, wood chips from felled timber, whatever organic material was available in quantity, laid thick, 6 inches or more, and left. Through winter, that layer of organic material was broken down by soil organisms, bacteria, fungi, worms, into rich humus that became the top layer of the bed by spring. The weeds that would have germinated in bare soil could not germinate through 6 inches of mulch. The moisture that would have evaporated from bare soil was held under the mulch layer through dry spells. The fertility that would have had to be purchased was built from material that had cost nothing. No tilling was required because the soil organisms had already broken down and incorporated the organic matter. No fertilizer was required because the decomposed mulch had provided it. No herbicide was required because the weeds had never gotten started. The Scott's Company, which owns Miracle Grow, generated $4.1 billion in revenue in 2023. A significant portion of that revenue comes from products that address problems the deep mulch system prevents from occurring. Weed killer for the weeds the mulch would have suppressed, fertilizer for the fertility the mulch would have built, soil conditioner for the structure the mulch would have created. The system that made those products unnecessary was not banned. It was not disproven. It was simply not mentioned in the gardening media, the extension service publications, or the retail garden center advice that replaced it. The fifth method is crop rotation, and this is the one that ties the entire system together because without it, the other 4 methods eventually fail. Soil is not a static resource. It is a living system. And like any living system, it can be depleted by the same demand placed on it year after year. A bed that grows tomatoes every year gradually loses the specific nutrients tomatoes require. It also accumulates the specific pests and diseases that affect tomatoes, which overwinter in the soil and emerge ready to attack the following season's plants. Depression-era gardeners rotated their crops on a strict 4-year cycle. Each crop family moved to a different bed each year. Legumes, beans, peas, fixed nitrogen into the soil in year 1. Brassicas, cabbage, kale, broccoli used that nitrogen heavily in year 2. Root vegetables, carrots, parsnips, beets followed in year 3, drawing on the residual fertility without adding to or depleting the nitrogen balance. A rest crop or green manure, a fast-growing plant that was cut down and dug in before it set seed, replenished organic matter in year 4. Then the cycle began again. The soil was never depleted because the demand on it was never the same 2 years in a row. The pests and diseases that targeted any specific crop family could not establish a permanent population because their host plants were only present in that bed once every 4 years. No pesticide, no soil test, no purchased amendment. The rotation itself managed the soil. The agrochemical industry that emerged after World War II had no product to sell to a gardener who rotated crops correctly. A garden managed with these 5 methods, the 3 sisters, saved seed, wood ash, deep mulch, and crop rotation, produces food from a standard suburban backyard at a fraction of the cost of purchasing that food. Not theoretically, demonstrably. The University of California Cooperative Extension calculated in a study published in 2012 that a well-managed home vegetable garden produces between $2 and $5 in food value for every dollar of input cost. That study used purchased seed and purchased amendments. A garden using Depression-era methods, free seed, free fertilizer, free mulch, produces that same food value with an input cost approaching 0. The agrochemical industry generates $250 billion in annual revenue globally. The home garden market in the United States alone generates $50 billion a year. Every dollar of that revenue depends on a gardener who does not know that the methods required to grow food without purchasing anything have been available and proven for 3,000 years. Those methods are still available. The soil behind your house does not know what year it is. It responds to wood ash and deep mulch and crop rotation in 2024 for exactly the same reason it responded to them in 1934. The chemistry has not changed. Only the curriculum has. If your grandmother or great-grandmother kept a kitchen garden and you remember anything about how she managed it, what she planted together, what she saved, what she put on the soil in autumn, drop it in the comments. That knowledge is exactly what was never written down, and it is exactly what is worth preserving. And as always, until next time.